Yeah. Jonathan? Well, we are continuing on our series called Emotions. We've talked about a couple of different emotions so far, and we're looking at this a little bit different perspective at some of the stories and some of the events in Jesus' life. We're looking at those through the lens of how Jesus dealt with specific emotions. So we've talked already about compassion and grief. We saw the grief of a woman, and we saw how Jesus responded to her grief with compassion. And then last week, we looked at anxiety. And remember, we talked about ways to relieve anxiety, and we see this clearly in how Jesus dealt with his anxiety with the Garden of Gethsemane. And we talked to your friends, right? Talk to your friends. Put words to it. Talk to your friends. Talk to your Father. Pray. Let our anxiety be this clue, this flag raised that said, hey, it's time to pray. And then talk to your feelings. How we put words to our feelings, and that enables us to actually use a different part of our mind that allows us to problem solve better. So sometimes our feelings aren't all that accurate, are they? They're real. They're real to us, but they're not necessarily true to the situation. And we put words to that helps us. So that's what we're continuing on this thought of looking at what Jesus, how he dealt with his emotions, and reminding us that emotions are not good or bad. They're amoral. They're just emotions. But what we do with them certainly can create good or can create bad circumstances. So this week we're actually talking about anger. So I was wondering, maybe you can think about, what's the angriest you have ever been? You know, we all like to say, most of us are good Southerners. We love to tell stories, right? And we start those stories. This is the maddest I have ever been. Has anybody ever done that? I do that. So I was thinking about this week, and honestly, I could not think of, Mike might be able to answer that better. Sometimes when I call the internet company Spectrum, I get really mad. That Bob had to deal with that this week. I get pretty mad when I deal with those companies sometimes. But I was thinking about this week, some of the angriest times for me, and I was having a hard trouble with specific examples, but I know where that realm falls if you want to really, and actually all you mamas out there, you're going to know what we're talking about. You know the whole mama bear thing? So you threaten our kids, there is something that happens in us, isn't it? I mean, come on, you guys know. And actually it goes a little broader than our kids. So I have heard and have experienced too, for those of us that are wives and mothers, you threaten our husband or our kids, and you're going to get a response. Now, it's like the wrath of women, right, that comes down on us, especially, we have the right to say whatever we want to say about our kids and about our husbands, but others don't have that right? Isn't that how it works? Come on. So I was thinking about that probably the threatening of Molly is probably my angriest times. And I wonder for you, what is that? What's the angriest that you have ever been? So it poses the question, is anger sinful? Is anger sinful? No. Anger is not sinful. Anger is an emotion. And emotions have the ability to move us forward in doing things that we should be doing anyway. Anger is important in that regard. Now, is it common for anger to lead us to sin? Well, yeah, there's a lot of angry, sinful sinning going on out there, right? Of course, tons of it. I mean, we see often some of the atrocities that we see happen are often fueled by anger, aren't they? Anger and hurt and all those things. So what we're going to do today is we're going to look at the life of Jesus and see how he dealt with the emotion of anger. What did Jesus do with anger? And was it normal for Jesus to be angry? And I think that's important too. The clearest example of Jesus being angry is found in the Gospels, and it's actually in I'm pretty sure it's in all the Gospels, and it's the account where Jesus has come to the temple the week before. It's right after what we know as the triumphal entry, where Jesus comes in on the colt and the hosannas. You guys know that, what we call Palm Sunday. right after that, following that, he goes to the temple. And it is the event where Jesus gets furious, doesn't he, in the temple with what's going on there. So that's what we're going to look at today. So this event takes place the beginning of the week that Jesus is crucified. Okay, so that's where we're going to pick up today. And we're actually in Mark 11 today. We're going to look at two verses here, 15 and 17 of Mark 11. On reaching Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple courts and began driving out those who were buying and selling there. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves, and would not allow anyone to carry merchandise through the temple courts. And as he taught them, he said, "Is it not written, 'My house will be called a house of prayer for all nations,' but you have made it a den of robbers." This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Okay, what's going on here? I mean, this is a fairly short little passage, and it's interesting. If you back up to verse 11, there's something that happens there that I want you to draw your attention to. In verse 11, after he's come into Jerusalem, and is what we know as Palm Sunday, the Hosannas, it says he entered Jerusalem and went to the temple courts then. Okay? He went to the temple courts and he looked around at everything, but since it was already late, he went out to Bethany and with the 12. So this is a little bit of projection on my part, but those people that were doing what they were doing that he got so mad about, the money changers and all, they were there earlier too. They didn't just show up that one day. They were there. And so he had gone into the temple, he saw it. So this wasn't just new information for him, okay? This wasn't like, oh my gosh, they showed up and they're here and now. I mean, Jesus knows this is going on. He knows this is going on. And when he goes to the temple and he sees it again, it almost sounds like it caught him off guard. And my point to you is, I don't think it did. I don't think it did. I think it was the time to deal with it. And Jesus, he dealt with it. He got angry. He clearly got angry. He didn't get a little angry. He was ticked. He was ticked off at what he saw. But recognize that this is not common for him. It's not common for him. Actually, if you start looking for examples of Jesus being angry, if you search it, most commentators will say there's 4 cases where Jesus was angry in Scripture. But when you look at the other 3, they don't sound so bad. I mean, I think it's there, but they're not quite as clear as this one. This one, he physically does something about it, right? This one's a little bit different. But this is not common for Jesus. This doesn't define Jesus. What was going on that would create this kind of response for Jesus? Well, I want to break this down a little bit, okay? So this is Passover week. We know that. We know this is the week of Passover. What that means is there's an enormous amount of people that have come into the city. There's all kinds of numbers out there that you hear people say. It probably doubled as much as 5 times. It could have been anywhere from 40,000 people up to that were there before the Passover to 250,000 with Passover. And I've seen some numbers that are more than that. So what we know is there was hundreds of thousands of people there. And they were there from all over the Roman Empire. They're there. So they are bringing currency from other places. Okay, those of you that have traveled internationally know that when you get into that country, one of the things you have to do, unless you're using plastic these days, which you can do, of course, but you got to exchange your money, right? And there's different exchange rates. So typically, the airports aren't the best place to do that, because the airports usually is kind of a convenience charge, right? They're going to charge you a little bit more, just like they charge you more for a bottle of water. Well, that's part of what's going on here, except it's a house of worship. It's a house of worship. And they're taking advantage of the people that are going to give an offering. And they're exchanging their money to the right currency, but the money changers are benefiting from this. They're taking advantage of the people. That is not selling well with Jesus. And that's not all they're doing. They go a step further, okay? I want you to look, if you'll take a look at the picture in your bulletin, there's a picture of like an outline of Herod's temple. So where this took place in the temple is where it says court of the Gentiles. Okay? They were actually set up outside of at the court of the Gentiles. Well, the court of the Gentiles is the only place in the temple that non-Jewish people could go. They couldn't go any further. So this chaos, now imagine there's animals to be sold, there's money changers, it's like a market, right? It's taking place, if you can imagine that we're trying to worship right now, and there's a flea market sitting right here beside us. All right, some of us would like that. We like flea markets. Just kidding. But that's what we're talking about. Here you're trying to worship, and you're trying to have commune with God, and there's chaos, and worse than that, in that flea market, they're being unfair to people. They're treating people poorly. They're not treating them with respect and giving them fair prices. Here's an example. So all these people, the sacrificial system is still in place. So people are bringing sacrifices for their worship, right? As they do that, they're traveling distances. They need something to sacrifice. So they're purchasing things. And if they were going to purchase a dove, let's say outside the temple, that dove might cost 4 pence. Well, inside the temple, where they need it, it's going to cost them 75 pence. You see what they're doing? They're taking advantage of people. They're taking advantage of people. And there's even more abuses attached to that. They were using a place of worship as a way to take advantage of people to make a greater profit. And Jesus wasn't going to have it. He had it. That wasn't the purpose. This is the dwelling place of God at this point. This is before the crucifixion of Christ. This is the dwelling place of God. And they're using it to benefit themselves monetarily. Come on. It's wrong. And he knew it was wrong. It hurt them. And then this Gentile court, and one of the ways we know that he was so offended by this, in verse 16, Jesus says, "Is it not written that my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations?" For all nations it's to be a house of prayer. That's the only place those Gentiles could worship. They couldn't worship. It was chaos going on. Jesus fully understood that non-Jewish people were being robbed of more than money. They were also being robbed of a place of worship. It was corrupt. It was wrong. And people were being hurt and taken advantage of in the name of God. The whole reason of them being there is so they can make their sacrifices and give an offering. So in the name of God, they were being taken advantage of. So what does Jesus do? He flips over the tables. He's mad. He's angry. But I want you to make note, this is not an everyday description of Jesus. This doesn't define him every day, does it? Jesus is not known for his anger. And what does it say? That we have 4 very clear writings, 4 books about Jesus, and we have to really look for the ones where he shows anger. What does that say about him? Jesus is known for his love. He's not known for his anger. He's known for loving the outcast. He's known for loving the tax collector and the sinner. He's known for loving the hurting and the unclean. He forgives sinners. He touches lepers, and he weeps for his friends' loss. Jesus is known for his love, not his anger. But does he get angry? Absolutely. Absolutely. He gets angry. But it wasn't a daily thing that defined him. And I think that's important for us as we look at this emotion of anger. So let's look at a few lessons for us about when Jesus gets angry. Okay, there's a couple clear things, I think, that will help us when we deal with our own anger. And the first one is, Jesus wasn't angry about what others did to him. He wasn't. Jesus was angry on behalf of those who were mistreated. There's a big difference between those two. He got angry when others were hurting and when people were taking advantage or mistreating other people. There's a huge difference. Jesus was frequently misunderstood, wasn't he? I mean, it happened all the time where he was misunderstood. He was falsely accused. He was called a heretic. But we don't see him flipping tables over that, do we? He didn't. He didn't. He didn't get angry when his rights were violated, when someone criticized him unjustly. He was angry for those who were being wronged in the name of religion, in the name of God. Guys, this is a big deal for our society today. This is a big deal for our culture today. We have become a society that is easily offended and easily angered. And if you're not sure, turn on social media for about 2 seconds. Right? Somebody says something I don't agree with. Oh, I am so offended. I'm so angry. I'm so furious. Maddest I've ever been because I don't agree with them. I don't agree with what they say. What in the world? We have become so easily offended. Well, let me just tell you, that's not consistent with the life of Jesus. It's not. It's not what Jesus did. To be angry like Jesus is to have righteous anger on behalf of those who are mistreated. It's not just because we disagree with somebody. It's those that are mistreated. The ultimate example, if you're going to pick an example for justified anger, wouldn't it be the cross? I mean, if there's a perfect time to justify, and Jesus would have had every right to do that, he was falsely accused, he was beaten unjustly, he was put on a make-believe trial, and he was crucified for something he didn't do. And what did he say? Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. He didn't get angry over what was done to him, but he got angry over the mistreatment of other people. Jesus offered love and forgiveness as a norm. How often do we get angry? And that's a good question for me too. I don't know about you guys, but emotions are just running higher these days. I mean, I feel it in my own. Are you guys feeling that? I feel that on in my own heart and soul too. Our emotions are higher. It's just normal has been taken away from us, and it feels weird. It makes our emotions run higher. I know that even my patience dealing with my family, I can feel when I'm running at a higher emotional level. But I think we need to check this one. How angry are we getting these days? It's appropriate to do an anger audit every now and then, right? Does anger define you? If somebody is going to draw, we have our family ever since Molly was little, have used little emoji things to communicate with each other. And we have little family emojis. Mike will draw them, we'll draw them and put them in Molly's lunchbox, or she'll write a note and do her a little emoji. If somebody was going to do emoji to you, does it have a mad face on it? Does it define you? If we're angry over things done to us for years, we need to deal with that. We need to deal with that. If we're holding on, if you can think of a person and you just rise up in anger, and I'm not saying that it's not founded, it might be, but we got to deal with it. We can't let that stuff sit in us. Jesus was an example of forgiveness. Of forgiveness. So I just encourage you to do an anger audit today, to look at where am I in this, and if I am feeling these intense emotions about others, start praying through that. Be honest with God. Start talking about that. Look towards forgiveness. And I'm not trying to make short of that. I'm just saying it's appropriate to start making steps towards it. The second thing that I think we can learn from how Jesus dealt with this is when Jesus got angry, he flipped tables, not people. He flipped tables, not people. And this is, Life Church TV, we're using some of their materials here in this series, and I love the way this was said. He flipped tables, he didn't flip people, did he? And what does that mean? That means this is big. He didn't cuss them out. He didn't punch them in the face. He probably wanted to, and I would have wanted to. He didn't do that. He flipped the tables. What do the tables represent? Well, the tables represent the system that supported the abuse. The tables set up there in that place of worship, in that space of worship for the Gentiles, were represented these obstacles that people had to reach God. and they were taking advantage of them in the name of God, and he was furious about it, so he turns them over. You see the difference? You see how that's productive? Now, that's not giving any of us an excuse to get ticked off and flip tables over. It usually doesn't go over very well in our house. But it does give us a way of looking at how people are mistreated around us. And what systems support that? I'll tell you one example that I think of right now, and that is the enslavement of people for the sex trade and human trafficking. Guys, there's systems that support that. There's money, big money behind that, and financial structures behind that. When we're angry over those things, we need to look at how do we disrupt the systems that are supporting those kind of abuses. It's appropriate to be angry over things like that. Maybe it's even simple not to be angry over such abuse, right? Maybe it's simple not to be fired up and fueled inside with emotion that somebody is hurting somebody else like that. It's appropriate response. Jesus' anger disrupted the system that supported the abuse of people. He flipped it over. Now, there's a place for it, but there's a warning that comes with this too. We have to be careful. We have to be careful. Because sometimes we feel so strongly about something that we're convinced we're right. We may not be right. Now, the human trafficking piece, we're obviously on the right end of that one, of the how horrible that is. But there's other things we get fired up about that we may or may not be right about that. So we need to walk carefully about this. And remember that the example of Jesus is not to be right, but to be loving. To be loving. It's easy to be so focused on being right that we forget we're really supposed to be known for our love. They will know us for our love. We're supposed to be known for our love, not for our rightness. But there's a place for it. There's a time and there's a place for it. And when we see abuses and atrocities, we should let that anger burn in us. Ask God, what do we do to help upset the system that supports this? And the last thing I think we can see in this is when Jesus got angry, he loved and helped those who were hurting. I think this one's really big. He didn't just flip over tables at the temple, right? He helped the hurting. He healed the sick. He was company and went face to face in relationship with the outcast. He embraced the tax collector. He did something with it. He did something with it. Sometimes, and I'm guilty of this, guys, sometimes I stop with being angry and think that I solved something by being angry. I voiced it. Oh, that ticked me off. That's so wrong. I feel so, I've told Mike this about 3 or 4 weeks ago. The level of abuse that's taking place through human trafficking in our own state, in our own area, it does make that righteous anger burn in me. And I can feel that anger, but I need to do something about it. So we begin looking at organizations as a family that we can support that are doing something about the underlying structures that are supporting that. And there are some organizations that are going after, they're helping victims, but they're also going after the systems that are supporting this. So I can't just let the emotion burn and think feeling the emotion is solving the problem. And I got to tell you, I'm guilty of that sometimes. And I suspect we all are. Well, I'm mad about it. Well, great. Now what are you going to do about it? Because Jesus did something with it. He did something with it. Do we allow our righteous, justified anger to fuel us to make a difference with those who are hurting, or we just feel the anger and that's the end of it? We need to put feet and put muscle and put money, put resources, put energy and love behind the anger we feel when others are hurting. What are the sensitivities of your heart today? What are the things that when you see it, when you hear it, when you experience it, you feel that righteous anger burn in you? Maybe human trafficking, maybe mistreated people groups, maybe drug addictions, maybe life for the unborn, maybe care for the elderly, maybe just unjust political systems. What is it for you that God has placed a sensitivity in your heart and it's probably connected somehow to your experiences? And then when you feel it, you feel that anger rise up. What I encourage you to do is begin to pray, God, what do I do with that anger? It's just like if anxiety is a stop sign that says, hey, it's time to pray, maybe anger is a stop sign, a clue. It's time to do something about this. Put some resources behind it. Do something with it. What will we do? What will we do as a church? Feeling emotion is not the solution, guys. It's just a catalyst for positive change on behalf of others who are hurting. Thank goodness Jesus didn't just say, yeah, that's not right. It bothers me. It hurts me. It angers me and walks away. No. He does something about it. Disrupts the system. He lets the people know that are being hurt. This isn't right. I'm going to stand tall here. I'm going to make it clear that this is wrong. Our big idea today is there's times for godly anger. Absolutely. There's times for godly anger, but don't sin. It's pretty simple, right? Straight from Scripture. Ephesians 4:26-27. In your anger, do not sin. Don't let the sun go down while you're still angry, and don't give the devil a foothold. We talk about this a lot in relationships, don't we? Hey, if you're mad at your spouse, or you're mad at your kids, or you're mad at your relatives, or anyone, you don't just put that away. That stuff festers. It gets out of control. That's the context of this scripture. It's still incredibly appropriate in the application of what we're talking about today. If you're angry, see that as a righteous anger, as a warning sign of we need to do something. But don't sin. Don't flip people. Flip tables like Jesus did. There's a place for anger. We don't want to be known by our anger, though. We want to be known by our love. We want to be known by how we care for people. Feel the anger. Don't suppress it. Allow yourself to feel it. Do a check from time to time about what makes you angry. Do an anger audit. See where you are in that. Are you angry on behalf of others? Good. We should be. Others are being hurt. Others are being mistreated. We should be angry about that. And then do something about it. Jesus shows us it's possible to express anger without sin. He did that. He expressed anger without sin. That's our goal too. Be angry like Jesus. Be angry for the mistreatment of people. Flip tables, not people. And love and help the hurting. We want to be known for our love. And when we're angry, don't sin. Will you pray with me?